So my name's Annie Gelfand, and I'm here with the lovely Lisa Murray, who is the creator and inspiration of the Business Alchemy Lab. And we were having a team meeting this morning, or actually this afternoon, and quite a few things have come up because we're kind of the guinea pigs in a sense, a pilot project for this very cool new thing. And quite a few things came up for me, and we thought that it might be really neat to talk about it and explore some of these topics so that Lisa can demonstrate a little bit about what it is that makes Business Alchemy Lab so very different from the way business is done. And that's certainly my incentive for being a part of this. My background is I'm an MBA, as is Lisa's, and I have found that doing business the linear way, doing the business plans and doing A plus B equals C just has never worked for me. It's never been exciting for me. I've been in business for 20 years and I am still struggling with some things that I'm really counting and hoping that will get a little bit more insight and, traction in my business by talking to Lisa.
Cool. So what are we going to talk about first?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is that piece that we talked about. Gosh, there's so many things. It's about not having any fun. So when I think about business, having been in business for 20 years, there's a few things. So pick out of this which ones we'll talk about first. But it's that thing that I have been looking for. What is it that makes my business special, unique? They call it, find your niche.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I've got so many things going on, and it's not like one thing stands out and says, this is it. So there's that piece. There's also a piece.
There. Just stop there. Okay. We can start there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's a really interesting thing, because what you said about that just then is that you don't know what makes you special and different, and you don't know how to find your niche. Now, they are actually they're two completely different things. But when you put them together and you think that they're all the same thing, that's when it gets galumped and you can't actually find the information that you're looking for. So if you looked at it, okay, let me just see. So with niches, let's start there. I never really went looking for a niche because I hated the idea, because I was like, no one's putting me in a box. I was in a box for, 20 years in corporate, and I'm not going in any more boxes. And right. And not in the beginning, it was definitely resistance, right? Whereas now I'm like, why would I do that to myself? Why would I limit myself in that way? And what I am willing to do, though, is look at what is different about me and look at how I can express that in a way that makes sense to people. So with Business Alchemy Lab, now, I've had the awareness of this as a program for, over 8 years, probably more like 20. But literally in the last 8 years, I've been actively working towards it. Now, I didn't know what it looked like. Okay, I didn't know what its theme was, so to speak, until the last few weeks. And now when I look at it, though, this whole idea of turning work into play and enjoying your work and finding the parts of, creating money and working that you really love and adore, that's what I've been doing in all sorts of different ways for the last 8 years. So literally I was being it before I put a name to it.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
So I guess the big question for me comes up with, this is an area that you be like breathing. It's so natural to you. So my question is, for someone like me, what is it that because this is the other piece of my question, because you talked about it's a being, not a doing.
Yeah.
But what is it that I can add or need to have that
tell
ease?
me, in the last, say, year, how many different things have you experimented with? Have you just played with? Have you tried out to see how they'd go?
Oh my God, so many I can't even count.
Right. So then what did you do with those things when you experimented with them?
That's the biggest thing that I have struggled with, is starting a lot of things and really they just fizzle into.
Okay, so how many of them did you put into the world? Let me ask it that way.
Maybe 10%.
Okay, cool. And that's okay. But how many is 10%? Is that one thing? Is it 20 things? Is it 100 things? Just give me a sense of that, please.
in the last year.
Yeah, roughly. Just a rough number.
10.
Okay, cool. See, my experimentation is much greater than other people's. 10's more than most people, right? Most people might have one or two things they would experiment with. And what happens is, so when you did those things that you put into the world, what happened after that? What did you do with them after that?
Um, they're kind of all sitting parked somewhere, like
Okay,
wait.
so
Yeah.
so okay, so did people buy them? Did anything happen from that part kind of
Some
perspective?
of them did, some
Yes,
of them.
cool. So here's probably where I'm different to almost everyone I know. So whether I get one person in there or 100 people in there or 1,000 people in there, I always do something with every experiment I run. And there's actually a reason it's called Business Alchemy Lab, because to get to where you want to get to, where you know what it is you truly desire to do, you've got to be willing to experiment, because I have discovered most of what I like doing by just playing with things and exploring and seeing, well, do I like doing this? Is it fun for me? Because some of the things that I thought I would love didn't turn out to be that much fun. And if I had bet my entire reality on that thing there, I'm going to do that thing and it's going to be awesome, and then it wasn't, where does that leave you, right? So my target through these last 8 years has always been to put lots of different things into play, but then it's what I do with it after that's the important bit. See, everyone else thinks the important bit is whether you
Say
made.
more about that.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone else thinks that they judge it on whether they made money or not, whether a lot of people came or not. Like, I went paddling this morning on the Noosa River, right? And I went with an Olympic paddler, and she's amazing, right? And she's also really energy aware. And no one else came because it looked like it was going to pour rain. So the two of us went, and it was beautiful, so awesome.
Mm.
Now, and I was talking to her after it, and I said, I'm really grateful that you still ran the class, She said, well, you have to. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. So I would still run things for one person or 10 or 20 or 100, because the moment I run it, I learn something. So this morning she said one small thing to me, because here she is, she's an Olympian, right? She's awesome at this. And she said one small thing to me that made everything work so much better. And she realized what the words were she had to give me to get that, for my body to actually coordinate in the way she knew was possible. And so every time you run something, you learn something about how you express what you know in the world. And if you start to collect all of that, and I'm going to call it information and awareness in a broad sense, what happens is you start to see patterns. And so this is one part of what we're talking about, okay? And we're going to go into this in a lot more detail in Business Alchemy Lab. But what happens for me is, so I started to see the patterns of the things that really worked well, the things that I enjoyed, the things that made me money. And I was like, okay, how can I have more of that? And then I would add to those things. And I would not, okay, so here's the thing. Most people go, I got it right or I got it wrong. Okay, that's their point of view about something they've created and put into the world. And they judge that almost solely on how many people said yes to it. I
Okay,
don't
so
work
say
like
I'm not doing that. I'm not
no,
judging that. Like
no,
I do two
no.
things with one.
I get that, but I'm saying
Yeah.
it for everyone else who is.
Yes.
It's not
But I'm
just about you,
imagining there might be.
Annie.
I know, but I'm imagining there might be others like me,
Yeah, there
who
probably
aren't
is. Yeah.
running it anyway.
So the thing is, though, that when you start to collect all those, what I call little wisps of information and awareness, so that's one part of it, right? So then there's this other part where I've always been looking at, well, what is the difference I would like to create in the world? And so that's different to having a niche, because when you say a niche, it's, I don't know, it always feels like a really clunky word to me. I don't even like it as a word. But what I look at is, well,
So let's drop these.
yeah, I know, but I want to talk about it for the people who do function from there and who are curious about what else is possible. So,
Yeah.
because we're having a conversation, but lots of other people are going to listen in on this conversation. Okay. And so literally, so when I started to look at, well, what would I like to create in the world? And one of the things that's been a very consistent theme for me has literally been, I would like people to enjoy their work. You spend a lot of time working in your life. And if you're not enjoying it, then wow, that's a lot of your life that sucks, basically. Right. And so I started adding these, experiments to what I would like to create in the world. And everything that I think of, like every idea that comes, I literally go, well, is this going to take me closer to those things or is it going to take me further away? And I go with the energy of it rather than the logic. And this even comes to paddling. Now, you would wonder what paddling would have to do with business, but I come off the water and my brain is just space. And then there's this whole other way of being with my business. So I have this way of including every, I'm going to say stimulation for want of a better word, but everything around me to contribute to what I'm creating. Okay.
Okay, so basically including something that is gentle and kind changes your energy in being with your business in a different way.
Um, it's part
Does
of
that
it. It might be gentle and kind, but if you go horse riding, it's not always gentle and kind. So
to your
it's
body
more,
and
yeah,
yeah.
it's more the thing that I'm willing to allow anything into my world that will create something greater for me, my business, and the world.
Okay.
And see, this is the nonlinear perspective around business. And this is what we're going to play with in Business Alchemy Lab. Because a lot of people are like, well, where's my how-to list? What order should I do these steps in? And I don't, as you've seen, I don't really work like that. I'm literally always looking at, well, what's the next thing that's going to move this forward?
So the way I'm seeing it is because I'm also imagining there are a lot of us out there who are like me, who realize that there is we're very aware there's a different way of being in business, and just don't know what that is. So I
Yeah.
have been watching you, and I'm getting the being that you be,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering, so what is a way through the Business Alchemy Lab that will be able to emulate that or find
Yeah.
that being for ourselves?
Yeah. Well, that's really what, the content is going to cover, okay? In the sense of I am going to do my best to unravel how I work, which is kind of an interesting thing because it's not like one day I woke up and I was like this, right? So I think I started out like this as a child. And then the more serious jobs I got in corporate, the less that was allowed to be, basically. And by the time I left corporate, it was almost completely gone. But you never completely lose the thing that you are, the thing that you be. And so what I'm going to say to you is that it is a nonlinear, in some ways illogical adventure that we're going to go on, because how you discover what these things are for you is going to be different to how someone else does it. I can't actually have the adventure for you, right? And this is the thing I see so often with people is they want me to have the adventure for them and just tell them the answer at the end.
It's no fun.
Well, it's funny for me to watch. It doesn't work like that. You have to go on the adventure. And the thing is, the adventure, so that when you ask me at the very beginning, well, what's the thing I want to do with my life sort of thing, the adventure is what's going to take you to that. But if you're refusing to go on the adventure of it's the thing of like, think about Christopher Columbus. If he refused to go on the adventure, he would never have discovered what he discovered. And that's the same for all of us. And so it's literally like, how many adventures are you refusing to go on? That if you would actually just go on them and see where they would go. And this thing of where I extrapolate the information out on the other side of the adventure, that I will probably do an audio about, actually, so I can give you some examples. I'll actually do that as part of the course materials, because it's literally this thing where every time I go on an adventure, I go, well, what worked about that? What didn't work about that? What would I like to have it be next time if I did it again? If I didn't do it again, what pieces would I take out of it that would actually allow me to create something even greater? Right?
So how do you tie together the being on an adventure
Yeah.
with discovering what you love, or what works for you, or the 50 projects that you might have started that haven't gone
Yeah.
anywhere?
Well, we're going to have a thing in Business Alchemy Lab called Finishathon, actually. And I did some pilots. See, this is the thing, right? So a lot of this comes from my own life. So last year I realized I was getting really crappy at finishing things. And I'd gone through a good phase and then I'd gone through a not so good phase, right? And so I started a thing called Finishathon, where we were literally doing 24 or 48-hour Finishathons where you would just focus on finishing things. No starting new things, just finishing things. And
I need
yeah,
that
well,
one.
we're going to include it as part of Business Alchemy Lab because, and when you have the support of a lot of people finishing things at once, it creates a really different energy. And you get to this point where you really desire to get something finished because that's actually where the magic is. So what you're asking me to do is kind of unravel like probably something that would take 4 hours to talk about. And I'm giving you the best I can in like 20 minutes. But literally, let me just see. What can I say that will make more sense? So it's like I do go with the energy, you know, and we started a couple of weeks ago with the free course on creative alchemy, which is very much about following the energy. And so when I'm looking at what I'd like to create, so are you looking for one thing, one answer?
No.
No? Okay, cool. Because a lot of people do. A lot of people are like, oh, I just need to know the one thing, the one magic thing that's going to create my entire everything. And it doesn't work like that either. Because what happens is you have 50 magic things. And if you ask them to all contribute to each other so that you can have even bigger magic things, then your business starts to grow and thrive. And what I want to ask you, Annie, is do you actually already know what this is, but for some reason you're pretending not to know?
Well, I'm partially doing it as a way to introduce what you're doing
I
to.
know, but there feels like there is something that maybe you haven't acknowledged. And this is also for a lot of people where
Yeah.
like, and I can actually say it's been this way for me. Like I know when I quit my corporate job, I wanted people to be happy at work because I was so unhappy. Like I literally used to write myself emails that I would send before I went to work so that when I got to work, I could be happy. Right?
That is
Now,
so cute.
well, I had to
Very.
find a way to keep showing up there. And in the end, my body was just like, we're done, you know, and that was the end of that. But it's like the hints of what I truly desired to create in the world were there for such a long time before I took any notice. And what I'm going to do in the first month is literally get people to unravel all the hints. I'm going to give you some processes for finding all of those hints, for finding all the little whispers, and then starting to see, well, what can they grow into? I know, right? What can they grow into that would actually make you really happy? Because every time I see someone enjoy their work more because of something that I've, you know, contributed to them in some way, that makes me really happy. And the world needs more happy
Yeah.
people.
Oh, for God's sakes, it really does. You know, and you said to me a little bit earlier too today, you said very specifically, it is not about what you do, it's about what you be.
Yeah.
And that information is not in the world. Like it's not in business. That is just
No,
not at
because
all
most
acknowledged.
people operate from their to-do list. Okay.
Exactly.
And I mean, and I used to. I mean, when I was in corporate, that's how I got through. And in fact, I used to function from my meetings list because I would have 10 meetings a day, most days. And when I look back, I'm like, that was such a waste of time, you know. And so literally now, I don't have a meeting unless I know it's required. But a lot of people fill in their time. Like, so what I see most people's to-do list is a way of filling in time. Okay. And if you want to really create a business that's fun for you, you don't want to fill in your time. You actually want to create joy in what you're creating. And so for me, it's like, so this week, so, you know, we've been working with the Thinkific platform for where all the content is going to be for everyone who joins Business Alchemy Lab. Now, a week ago, I'd never seen that platform. I'd like looked at it maybe a month ago and go, oh yeah, I'm going to use that in the future and put it to the side. I didn't spend any time at the time looking at it really, except that, yep, that's the one. And that was an energetic thing. That was just like, yeah, that platform's going to be awesome. You know, it's going to work for what I require. Not really knowing the how or the why, but just knowing it matched in energy, right? And so then in this last week, It's been a learning curve. Now, if you, when we're talking about the being and doing, so if I took that learning curve of, oh my God, I've got to learn how to do all these things, and I'm going to go and look it up and look up the help and write to them and la, 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 in a really linear, logical way, which is how most people would learn a new platform, right? But because I prefer to make it fun for me, I'm like, oh, I'm going to create this bit. I wonder how that works. And so literally the being comes in the way you do things, okay? Because being isn't doing nothing. People think being is doing nothing. And I thought that for a long time, but it's actually not really that. It's more about the way you do things, and that you be first and do second. Because if you look back at anything you've ever created that didn't really work, I would guarantee that it was all from thinking and all from doing, and there was very little being included in that thing. It was either, oh, everyone
I
else is doing
imagine
it.
that
Yeah, yeah. And I'm saying it,
the Business Alchemy Lab will have a lot more tools and tips for getting into being.
Yes. Well, it has to, because, and like, this is the funny thing. Being isn't something we have to get into. It's just something we be. And, this is a convoluted thing. And a lot of people, I mean, trying to be is a doing, So,
You're right.
so what I would say about that is
business. It's funny because, yeah.
Well, let me give you the example. I'm going to keep going with the thinkific example. So rather than try and work it all out, I would just go, oh, to be able to do that, I need to do this thing. How does that thing work? Okay, let me see if I can get that to work. And then if something didn't work, I would write to the help desk. But then, of course, it might take them, 12 or 24 hours to come back. And so then I would be like, oh, well, what else can I create? So I would get all these things half done, right? So that I could see, well, how far could I get without having to write to the help desk? But the energy I was doing it with was very much from the space of being. It's like, okay, so what else is required here? What else do we need to know for this to work the way I know it can work? And so it wasn't like this, and as you know, in the base camp, like we have a project management system that we're using, but it's not very linear, is it? No, because for me, it's like, oh, I become aware of something, I add it in there. I become aware of something else, I add it in there. And what I would like in Business Alchemy Lab is for people to get that this is a much faster way of creating. Because what we've created in a week would take most people months and months, actually.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, because the thing about creating non-linearly is it also can create a sense of what I can only call overwhelm.
Yeah.
It's looking at and going, where do I begin with this?
Yeah. Well, you see, I know what you're saying. So overwhelm often is just too much information or not knowing which piece of information to start with. So for me, I would have a sense of where I'd like to go. And when I say that, it's pretty broad. Like I knew that within this week, we needed to get a promotional campaign together. And I knew that I needed to understand the basics of the Thinkific platform to make sure that it could do what I required. Because I didn't want to be 2 days out from launch going, oh, this platform doesn't work. What am I going to do now? Right? Mm-hmm. So I have this sort of broad sense of where I need to go within the timeframes. And then with that, when you talk about the overwhelm, yes, there is, 1,000 tiny moving pieces. But what I do is I'm very present with all of the 1,000 moving pieces, but not I have to do them all now. It's more like, right, which thing do I need to do now that will move it forward the fastest? And so if you tap, just hang on one sec. So if you tap into that, and I ask the business, okay, I don't do it from working it out because I've realized a fair while ago, I'm not that, okay, I'm smart and I'm not that smart. So the business knows things I don't know. And this is why I did the Creative Alchemy free 7-day thing, for people to start tapping into that energy of knowing that your projects will give you information. And so I have been in the Thinkific Facebook group a lot this week because I knew that if I kept going in there, I would get the pieces of information that I needed to know what to do next. It's a really weird way of creating, right? And this is where people are going to go, you're just strange. I'm like, yeah, I am, but it works. And what it is about trusting yourself that you are going to go to the place you need to go at the moment you need to have the piece of information that is the place to start.
Wow.
So I am aware of all of that,
Mhm.
and I'm willing to know that I know, and this is not a logical cognitive thing, but I'm willing to know that I know, oh, if I go there now, I'm going to get the next piece of information I require. Or if I go and post there now, someone's going to come along shortly. And this is not logical either, right? But I'm kind of spelling it out in hindsight for you to get the sense of how it works. It's like someone, I put something up yesterday that I was like, oh my gosh, this thing, it wasn't going to do what I really, really needed it to do. And then 10 minutes later, someone came and posted, yeah, I've got the same problem. They're working on it. And so it was like, oh, I could relax. Is this
Wow.
making any sense or not? I don't
Well,
know. I mean, it's just how it works. So
the thing that's occurring to me as you're speaking is how similar it is to creating anything, like in painting or drawing or writing.
yeah,
It's a flow until
yeah,
the flow kind of stops, and then
yeah.
it's what's next.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is a flow. And we're going to talk a lot about flow in Business Alchemy Lab because it's a topic I've worked with a lot over the last years. And more I see that if you never assume anything has stopped, if you never go, I don't know what to do next, if you just keep asking, well, what is next and what is possible now, then this whole flow thing comes in such different ways. Most people allow themselves to get stopped. And that actually is where the overwhelm comes. Because if I stopped and looked at the 10,000 things, it would be overwhelming, right? But literally, I go, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And I just keep drawing the threads in. It's like almost like weaving, I would say, in a way. You're literally like, well, which thread next? And you know that you're weaving this thing together that is going to become something beautiful by the
You're,
time you finish.
you're creating business 10 seconds at a time.
Yeah,
That's what creates the joy, because we're doing
yeah,
it as we love it and staying in the adventure of it and being, not thinking. I'm so excited. I can't wait to try this all out. Like, I know
yeah,
you have these little tips and tricks, and you're just so
yeah.
fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And it is going to be fun, and this is the thing, like I have got so much more pleasure with my work than I've ever had, like in my entire life. Because I used to work because I loved the creation process, right? I grew up creating, and I when I was like in my 20s, I worked for the creation, the joy of the creation. But there's a lot of doing involved in that. And now what I'm aware of is it's moving into, yes, doing, but doing with that whole space of being underneath it that allows it to be even more fun. And, I mean, you've seen me. Have I been stressed?
No.
No, I think I had one day where I was just everything like for all these other projects was also coming at me. And I was a bit like, okay, people, you have to hold off for just like 24 hours, you know? But
Yeah.
that's not stress. I mean, I remember what stress was, and this isn't it,
No, if
So,
anything, there was an intensity, but it wasn't
yes,
stress.
no.
Very
And this
different.
is exactly, and this is what I would really love to invite people to with Business Alchemy Lab is the pleasure of creating what makes you money rather than going to the stress. Like, I'm in a lot of different Facebook groups, and what I see most commonly is people being stressed about their launches. And like for me, launches are just another little adventure. And I don't really have a point of view if I get 10 people or 100 or 1,000 people. And I'm always willing to keep growing things. So anyway, that's a whole other topic. And yeah, you're right. We could talk for another 3 hours, and inside the lab, we probably will. So, because there is fun things, like we're going to have a telecall every month where you can literally ask me anything, like all these questions like you're asking me, Annie, I will pretty much talk about anything. And, I would like to get it to a place where you have a lot of choice about how you create your business, and you can enjoy the process and the adventure of it as much as the end result.
Wow, I am super excited about this. This product, what you're creating, it doesn't exist in the world that I'm aware of. And you are birthing something that is going to literally change the way we do business. And I am
I hope
counting on
so.
experiencing that myself.
Yeah, well, I would love it if it changed how people did business. I would be so thrilled by that, because it's just, wow, there's so much more magic available than what we use. And that's the alchemy part of it, right? I named it, I always name my things very specifically. And actually, I can't wait to have that conversation too. We're going to talk about naming. So I do want to say, actually, for anyone who's wondering, we are going to talk about a lot of practical things. But we're going to talk about them from the space that I create with, which is quite different to how other people do it. Because I have a real way of naming things, and it's very energetic, actually. And when I go from that space, it always works. So I want to show you how these things work and how they can work for you and what's possible beyond what any of us know yet. It's going to be a
Yay.
co-creative space as well. Yeah.
Nice. I'm
Yeah.
so excited.
Yeah. So if you want to find out about it, we're going to start on May the 1st. And you can go to businessalchemylab.com and you'll find out all about it. And I can't wait to play with you all because it's even been fun just having this conversation. You can see I like business. It's a really cool thing for me to play with. So I'd like to play with all of you as well. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you. You are welcome. Yay.